Hello, everyone. We'll get started here in a minute or two. We'll wait to see if there's anyone else that joins us. So I do have it recording. I didn't want to forget to do that, so it's already recording. But we'll give people another minute or so to join. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dana Carey, and I'm part of the admin team for the Facebook group. And I am not an expert on building thinking classrooms. I did implement it all year last year with my 8th grade classes. I'm not an elementary teacher, but hopefully some of you can, talk to that aspect of it, but I'm happy to answer questions or, have discussion the best I can as regards to elementary. I'm just here to have conversation, So, does anyone have any questions or anything you want to start with? Or, I can get us rolling, but if you have anything that's on your mind that you want to talk about with chapter 3, where students work in the thinking classroom, just feel free to chime in anytime. We've got a small enough group. We can, just have an open conversation here, which works well. I am in my classroom and the bell's going off. But anyway, does anyone have any questions or anything they want to start with? Okay, that's all right. So I reread this chapter the other day. It's a nice little short chapter. And one of the things that stood out to me was on page 58, where Peter mentioned that that the where they work and the random groups, the vertical non-permanent surfaces, you've probably seen that a lot in the Facebook group, abbreviated the VNPS, and the random groups had the most profound effect than any other of the techniques that came out of his research. And so, I don't know how much you follow the Facebook group, but I've seen a lot of people say that that's the only part they implemented. And that's fine. You have to do what works for you. But those pieces are the most critical pieces in the whole realm of building thinking classrooms. So I thought that was interesting. One of the other things that I got out of this chapter was on page 65 in the frequently asked questions. And it talks about moving the marker. And I had some issues with that this last year. And so I implemented where the one who has the marker does not get to write their own thoughts. And that helped a lot, especially for my high ability kids who just want to get up there and just write it all. And then what we also did, if we were doing a series of problems, I would have them switch the marker at every problem. That worked for me. You have to do what works for you, but that helped keep the marker moving a little bit also. So where they work, I'm in a middle school room. I'm not in an elementary room, but I feel like with elementary classrooms, maybe they don't have as much vertical space as what I may have. So does anyone feel like you don't have enough space, and how am I going to get that space to put my kids at a vertical space? Anyone?
I am not concerned about the vertical space in the room. I think if there's a will, there's a way. I would love to see how you have it set up in your room as just an idea.
Yeah, I can move my computer so you can see. Now, I am very fortunate that last year, because I've started reading the book in April and got my counterpart to read it. And so when school was out, I went to my principal and I said, look, I want to implement this building thinking classroom. They didn't know anything about it. And I said, but I need more whiteboards, because I had a decent amount, but I didn't have enough. And by the grace of God, he said, okay. And the superintendent said, okay. And I got whiteboards. So I don't know, but let me see if I can show you. That's the front of my room. Well,
Oh, that's nice.
Kind of the front, I did the whole defronting, but that's where the projector goes. And then it goes, I'm trying to get it here, all the way around. And then a little bit on the back wall by the window. And then you can see I divided it into sections and I numbered the sections. And then I also have little push lights on mine. So if they have a question or need some help, they can hit that light instead of hollering at me, or just, standing there kind of, waiting till I'm done with the group. And then I can see, oh, this group has their light on, and I can get around to them. So I have the numbers. So when I call my groups, I can say, you're at board 1, you're at board 3, try to space them out depending on class size. If I can space them a little more, that helps than having them all packed together. But I have classes where I have to have them all packed together. That's just the way it is. I could probably, if I wanted to spread them out, I could create some additional space, but this has seemed to work for me. My classes range anywhere from about 17 to maybe 25.
Okay.
So, but that's what works for me. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. You also just mentioned that you have them work on multiple problems at a time.
Sometimes.
I was working as I was reading this, I just finished chapter 3. I'm starting chapter 4. It was my impression that that you would do the vertical, that you would apply these concepts with the more complex tasks that the children would be completing.
You can do both. Peter talks about doing thin slicing, where you start kind of below where they are and then progressively get harder. And that would involve a series of problems.
Okay.
So it's, and thin slice, I can't remember which chapter it's in, but it's down the road a little bit. So it just kind of depends on where you are with your content, or do you, and what you want to do. Is it something you want to do thin slicing with? Is it something you want to do rich tasks? Is it something we kind of played around with a lot of different things this last year to see what would work for us. and just tried all kinds of things. So
But utilizing the vertical boards with the groups of 3 was something that stayed consistent. How often do you change your groups of 3 or have them rotate? Do you have them do randomization daily, or did you turn that into a weekly thing?
I did different groups every day.
All year?
Yes. Well, I didn't do groups every day all year. We did try to mix it up a little bit. That 8th graders, I mean, I think in general, any level would probably get tired of it after a while, and you got to kind of mix things up and
Yeah.
try to keep things a little fresh. But we were at the boards a lot. So, as much as we could be, and then we, it's like, okay, let's try this different activity today. And we may just do a group activity at their seats. Or maybe, I don't know, just do a different activity. We were at the boards a lot.
Okay. And one question that keeps coming up as I've been reading is where to find some of these non-curricular tasks. I Googled it and I found one girl who is implementing the thinking classrooms, and she had one to offer. I teach 4th grade. And then it looks like Peter has one non-curricular task there, but I am at a loss for even at how to create them.
Right. So in the Facebook group, if you go to the guides, we have created a spreadsheet that is entirely devoted to non-curricular tasks. And you'll find a whole bunch of them linked there. And then there's also another spreadsheet for curricular tasks. And there's a sheet for each grade level kind of thing that we also created. And anyone can post there. So if you find something that's not on the spreadsheet, load it in so we can share. But you'll find a bunch of them there. And there are several in the book. As you read through the book, there are several that, and he'll put tasks in it for different grade levels. Like at the end of this chapter, he's got some for K. He has one for K through 3 and one for 4 through 7. So he does put several in the book as you read through.
Okay. And where would I find this spreadsheet then? Is it like
in the guides? When you go to the Facebook page, at the top, it has different headings like guides, events, and I don't remember what else at the top.
are
But
you saying guide or guys?
guide.
Okay. Okay.
And it has, that's where you'll find the resources, videos. I think there's 3 separate spreadsheets.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you can also, on the Facebook page, if you type in search in the search bar, type in non-curricular tasks, you'll get a lot of posts that other people have where they've asked the same kind of question, and people have shared things that they've done.
Okay.
So I use the search a lot, especially now because we were getting a lot of posts and it's hard to keep up and follow along. And so I use the search a lot if I'm looking for something specific.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everybody. I was just wondering, is the middle school one in about 45 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just elementary?
Yep.
Although
but you're welcome to stay.
Already fascinated. I know. I was like, well, maybe this applies to me too, but I do have some things I want to take care of. So I'm going to be back in about 45 minutes. So
okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Dana,
Yes.
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I teach 6th grade, which is like that awkward grade. It's for us, it's still elementary, but they're really already middle school. One of the things that I notice is every time I try to get them up and moving, they like gravitating back to the desks, back to the chairs. You know, my legs hurt, my feet hurt, my everything hurts. Now they want to sit down. How do you set up your classroom that you I want to come into the school. Yeah, I want them to come in where the classroom looks totally different, where they don't even think that sitting at a desk is all that much fun because there's so much going on the boards that they want to do this. Where do you put your desks and your chair? I mean, maybe
Right.
no chairs.
Well, I have desks and chairs because ours are attached. And one of the components is to defront the classroom. And so my classroom isn't very big. And I tried to put my desks in groups of 3, and I just didn't have enough space to have them far enough away from the whiteboards. And so I put mine in groups of 6, and I have the groups turned different ways so that they're not all facing the front. And they still like to think of it as the front because that's where the projector is, but my desk isn't up there. And when I talk to the kids, I try to stand at different places of the room than up where the overhead is. So
Now, do they sit randomly at those desks then too, once you have them randomly grouped for their?
no, I actually give my students assigned seats. And I do that because if I'm going to be out, then the sub has to know where the kids
Okay.
and I was out a lot last year, which was unusual for me, but I had to have that consistency. And I think for 8th graders, they really liked knowing this is where I'm going to come in and sit. And then what I did, I don't know if any of you were in the chapter 2 session, but when I made my random groups, I had picture cards of the students that I had made because to try to learn their names before school started. And so I ended up just using these to make the groups. And so they get in their seats and I pull out the kids who are absent. I stand there and talk to them about what we're doing today or whatever. And I shuffle the cards and then I pull 3 at a time and send them to the boards. And that worked for me. But everybody's different and everybody's classroom is different. And so you just have to figure out what works for you. And I always go back in my brain to where Peter talks in the introduction about how this is a framework and you have to do this framework, how it works for you. And he specifically says, bring all of your teacherly craft into it. Don't quit doing the great things we're already doing, but implement it with the building thinking classroom. And so it kind of took a lot of pressure off me because I'm one of these, well, I got to do it just the way it is. And no, I don't. I can do what works for me, what works for my kids, what works for my classroom, what works within my building. And so keep that in your brain as you go through the process of doing all this. It's okay if it's not exactly the way he says to do it in the book.
So my follow-up question would be, in your experience, like you said, you have students out. Would you go, let's say you have 8, if in a perfect day, you have 24 students, 8 groups of 3. If there's students out, would you go down on the number of groups or would you go down on the number of students as you take out your name, your face cards?
So what happens is, so if you have kids who are absent, it just adjusts, depends on how many are absent. I mean, if you have 24 in the classroom and you have 2 absent, all right, 2 absent, then I'm going to end up with 2 groups of 2.
Okay. But if you were to have 3 absent, then you do 7 groups of 3 and just leave 1 blank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get to play a little math.
Yeah.
yourself.
You can
Okay, good.
make it work.
I was just wondering if
yeah.
how the kids react, would they prefer just working with another person and it's just 2 of them, or just then you have less groups to worry about?
I don't usually give the kids a choice.
Yeah. Okay.
I just put them up how I think it's going to work best. And so if it's odd numbered, then I have a group of 2 or 2
Okay.
groups of 2. Because groups of 4 is a little too much. They get too off task. It's too many. But there are times, especially with my high ability classes where I may just do groups of 2 that day. So, and that works okay sometimes, it just kind of changes it up a little bit. Not, I didn't do it all the time, but every once in a while I did groups of 2.
Okay,
Oh.
thank you. I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm just going to chime in there. I teach second grade. This is Christine Schultz. And I mainly only did groups of 2 just because I wanted more conversation going. I wanted all kids participating at all times. And I also did a lot of where one had the marker and then the other one that was behind that person had to tell them what to write. So then I didn't want one odd man out just standing there, not doing anything. It required more work from the students if I just put them in pairs of 2.
Doesn't he mention that in the chapter?
Yes.
About,
Yes, the lower elementary is probably
Yeah.
better with groups of 2,
yeah,
just for that fact.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I teach third grade, and I found at the beginning of third grade to treat it like a second grade, and just to make the groups, just to make the roles kind of clear, like you're saying, Christine, just to have, you're the person and you're the person with the marker, because it's new for them to have the marker and not be writing down their ideas. It almost might work at any grade level, I think, to be, you're going to listen to somebody else and you write down their ideas is kind of a new concept for some of them. So even at the beginning of third grade, I did it that way for the beginning. I started at Christmas, after Christmas, for that way for a few days, just to get them used to that idea. And I love all your boards, Dana, but if you're not lucky enough to be able to get that, I used some better than paper boards, and also sneeze guards. I don't know that they call them exactly, but we have a lot of these boards that were given to us to be sneeze guards, and those worked really well as boards to write on, if you have those.
I love that idea, these boards, because we have tons of them. How did you mount those to the wall?
I didn't. I actually just used those when we were working in pairs of 2. I used the sneeze guards, and ours are actually like a triangle. They're have 3 parts, so the kids can write on them. If they hold them at the top, they can write on them and they don't fall down. And we only did that for a little while. Then when we got in groups of 3, I had enough room. I have 2 big whiteboards, and I put up a better than paper board, so I had enough whiteboards when they were in groups of 3. I have 25 third graders, so usually 24. Some would have to, so it worked out pretty well. But the sneeze guards didn't work. They could be mounted. I think they could be mounted to the wall. I just didn't do it.
Very cool.
The command hooks work really good for putting things up on the boards or on the walls. And also to help with the standing. A lot of times I had bookshelves underneath, because I also use like sticky whiteboard paper on the windows because I couldn't see it very well with the sun shining through the windows. So on the kids were able to sit on the bookshelves while they wrote on the vertical whiteboards, and that, or I had different stools that they could bring up to the whiteboards and stand on the stool. So if they could stand on something, they were better off and they would stay there longer, because, that was something that you just aren't allowed to do at school, is stand on things and sit on bookshelves. So, that created an element of, oh yeah, I want to do that too.
I think it was Lena who you were asking me about the kids being at the boards and ended up still sitting. My issue with kids at the board, first of all, I had to get my desks further away from the whiteboard. And that's why I have the larger groups of desks instead of the groups of 3. But then I still have kids who will want to sit on the floor, kids who want to lean like they're dying, oh my gosh, I have to It's killing me. And so there's a lot of redirection with that. But someone in one of the sessions the other day when we did chapter 2, told them that they had to put their thinking legs on. They were going to use their thinking legs. And that's why they had to stand, because they're their thinking legs. And I thought that was, I mean, I don't know how well that will work for me with 8th graders, but I liked it. And I can see myself during it. No, we're using our thinking legs. You have to stand. You have to stand. And so it is tough though, we'll have those kids who will just flat out sit on the floor. And at least I did anyway. And maybe that's just because it's 8th grade, but, and so it's, no, you have to get up. I tell them, if I can stand all day, you can stand for 30 minutes. And so they groan and they get up, but it can be a struggle though. Yeah. So, anyone, anything else they want to add so far?
I think listening to you just makes me realize that I think with the non-curricular tasks, you just start with smaller, shorter tasks and have them kind of build up their stamina. They come from summer break. They can barely be in a classroom as it is. So shorter, and maybe do one in the beginning of the lesson or the class and one at the end. So they do it a couple times. But yeah, I kind of see where once they go to upper elementary and into middle school, that becomes tedious a little to keep redirecting.
Yes. And
So I get
my
you.
counterpart and I talked about, we've talked a lot about starting the school year a little differently. And last year we did what Joe Bowler calls the week of inspirational math. I don't know if any of you follow her on the YouCubed or anything. But a lot of her stuff goes well with the Building Thinking Classroom. And so what we talked about was we don't need to do a long non-curricular task in that first week. And we're thinking 15 to 20 minutes at the board each day. Because there are other things we want to do to build routines and talk about the whole process and why we're doing what we're doing. And Joe Bowler has a whole bunch of videos that work great that first week of school. And so we want to incorporate some of those things also. So we're like, but you know what? It's okay if our non-curricular tasks are only 15 to 20 minutes. It'll be enough time. And they're not designed for them to necessarily finish anyway. And that's okay. It's just getting them into that process of, oh, I have to work with kids I may not know. I have to learn how to talk to them about something, because that's a big thing. Kids aren't used to talking about math, at least for me, they aren't. And so it's just getting them comfortable in that process. So
I have another question about that. Full
okay.
of questions and sticky
That's all
notes today. So you said they don't have to finish it, and that's fine. At what point do you time yourself or the group and say you have 15, not to them, but to yourself, I give them 15 minutes and see where they are? Do you at any point step in after all when they're just completely falling apart? Because there's, they really don't know what to do when you start making your notes. When do you determine that? When do you, is it like watching a toddler before their meltdown? You step in?
Yes. In a way, it's really interesting because, I was so used to running around the room like a chicken with my head cut off, checking papers and answering questions. And here I get to just stand back and watch it all happen. And it's really neat because I'm not doing those runs. And so you're watching the group and you can see they're struggling, and you're not supposed to go up right away. You have to let them have that struggle and see if they're going to look at another board for help. And I don't talk to them about doing that. I didn't this last year anyway. I just kind of let them realize, oh, because kids look at other kids' work, and so I just kind of let that happen. And so I just stand back and watch, okay, they're kind of there, but I can see they're stuck, and I let them struggle a little bit. And then when I see they're either stalling, like they've just hit the wall and they don't know where to go, or they're going off somewhere that's completely opposite of where they need to be, then I'll go up and try to give them some hints to get them back where they need to be. But definitely let them hang there for a couple minutes and struggle.
Do you use the different colors where you have your own so other groups can see what you put on the board versus what groups have put on the board?
Yes,
You do
I
that.
do try really hard to use a different color. It just kind of depends on where I am in the supply of markers.
Yeah.
Because we buy stuff ourselves, or the people give us stuff. And so I end up with all these different colors. And so I would try to put out colors where then I know which color's mine, or they can tell that mine's the different color. But because you can't always just like give all the kids a black one and then you use a different one. So they may all have whatever color and then I have a different color. Or it could be they all have colors and I have the black one. So it just kind of varied throughout the school year depending on what I actually had to use. So, because markers aren't cheap.
I was even thinking of, pinning a marker next to one of the VNPS, each of them on a string. And so each group, wherever you end up, that's your color to use.
Right.
So for the students, it changes. And then I just replenish as they dry out or whatever happens, but they can't take them anywhere because mine just walked out the door way too many times. So
I didn't have too many issues really with the kids taking the marker. I had issues with them taking magnets because I would use a magnet to put something on their station. Like if we needed a graph that day, or I would just put the task on their whiteboard with the magnet. They would take my magnets until I got some more generic ones, and they weren't so bad about that. But I was, taking, and they would tear up my erasers. But they're 8th graders. So 8th graders, their mindset's just different. So. So we've got a few minutes left. We're doing about a 35-minute session because I have the free Zoom, which only allows for 40 minutes. Is there any last questions or comments or? Yeah.
Can I ask you just quickly about the push lights?
Yeah.
Do you have them use that for questions or for answers, or when they have a question or when they have an answer?
When they have a question, not when they have an answer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's, Peter says we're not supposed to tell them if the answer is right or not. And I really struggled with that this last year. I'm going to try to do better about that with this year's group, because it's hard to not. Sometimes you just do stuff. You just have to tell them, yep, you got that one, going to the next one. No, the lights are strictly for, I need help. I have a question. And they do like those. Of course, I had to buy them. But they worked pretty well for me. Anyway, I thought it was efficient. I don't it's hollering at me or
Amazon.
Walmart.
I got some at the dollar store.
But yeah, I think I got them at, I got some on Amazon and some from Walmart. So, sorry, that was my alarm, so I wouldn't forget the time.
So not telling them whether they are correct or not when they are ready to move on to the next task. and they're completely off, but they have an answer, what do you do?
Well, I've talked about that with my counterpart. When we've talked to, we're going to try to tell them that if they ask if it's correct, how can you test it to see if you're correct?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
How can you estimate, to see if you're close to the right answer, and try to guide them that way to look at ways that they can see if their answer might be right.
So then you have to do that whether they're correct or not. You have to say that every time, because otherwise you would give it away.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a transition for me. I really struggled with not telling them that it's right.
Mm-hmm.
So. Okay. Anyone else? I think we're just about out of time. It may cut us off. I don't know.
No, this was awesome. I have like 20 sticky notes full of awesome
Good.
useful information. The
Awesome.
first 3 chapters, he's right. You could just dive in now and just kind of get familiar with it. Now I
Yep.
just need, I teach summer school, so I'm planning on using them as
Yeah.
my little guinea pigs.
Absolutely.
Do that.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank
All
you,
right.
Dana.
You're
Greatly
welcome.
appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.